Hello everyone, I Radhika Khurana welcome you to yet another episode of Lawyer Speaks presented to you by Law Community, wherein we invite brilliant minds of legal fraternity so that you get to know their story and peek into their lives. Today, we have with us author of two books, Advocate Vaibhav Mishra, who Supreme Court of India, who is also a senior associate at CNC Associates. So my first question, let's start the question part. So my first question to you is how your journey has been as a lawyer, these past 10 years.
I'm an accidental lawyer. I did my 3 years law. Like most 3 year law students who become lawyers are actually accidental lawyers. If you read some of the autobiographies of various 3 year law graduates. I did my BCom honors from Zakir Hussain College, Delhi University. I passed out in 2009. Then I never wanted to be a lawyer. In fact, one of my cousins who was doing from ILS Pune, I used to mock him, ki kya chhata wala banoge kya? Because that was the image we used to see on films. And I mean, that was the description was. Law in my generation, well, I'm 32, so I'm assuming you all are younger than me. So you are the millennial generation. So in my generation, when we used to see in the 90s and all, we used to see this description of the lawyer on TV. Someone sitting under an umbrella, or someone who's meager and eager to make fool out of people. So that was the image. So I used to make fun of my cousin who was studying at ILS Pune. Uh, I wanted to do an MBA. In fact, I had given CAT, ZAT, and all of the entrance exams after my BCom honors. I, in fact, was studying from a coaching institute also for MBA preparations. Side by side, I was preparing for my Army Combined Defense Services entrance exam. I cleared that. I went for my SSB also at Allahabad. That didn't work out. In the meantime, I got a job at a place called Aon Hewitt. At that time, it used to be called Hewitt Associates. I was working there as a research associate. This was after my giving my exams of MBA and CDS for Army. In between, I gave an exam for an opening for LLB from campus law, Delhi University Law Faculty. Or just be an extra option. I had no inclination of doing an LLB program. At best, if I would do, I would be doing that evening course, which used to happen. It's ended now. That even if you're working, you can do that course in the evening from, I think it was 6 to 9 at that point of time. While working, I got a good amount of good rank, so I was eligible for the morning course also at Campus Law Center. So my father told me, go if you have the option. Not everyone gets the option, but it's a good college. Campus Law Center at that point of time was one of the premier colleges all over India, not just amongst law school, but all over India. So I had the opportunity to enroll and I did my 3 year law program. It was quite fun. I did internship at various places. I was not inclined towards litigation, but I enjoyed whatever litigation internship experiences I had. That inclined me towards becoming a lawyer. But even while doing the LLB course, I was not thinking of practicing it. After some time, after interning at various places, at various organizations, and with different senior advocates and lawyers, then I thought this is a good initiative and I should pursue it. Based on that, then I started working as a law clerk in Supreme Court after my graduation. In 2013, I was with Justice Shivkirti Singh. After that, I was working at a place called Luthra and Luthra Associates. Now I think it's called LNL Partners. I was there for 1.5 years. And in the litigation team, I was there. Then after that, I wanted to do some good code experience work. So I was with Mr. Ajay Verma. He's currently senior standing counsel for DDA. To face property matters and land-related matters and arbitration related to that. So that gave me good court exposure, appearing in high court before various courts, before various judges, and doing all kinds of property and land-related matters. So that was very interesting for me. Currently, for the past 3 years, more than 3 years, in fact, I'm working in a law firm called CNC Associates as a senior associate, and I do all kinds of matters from NCLT, insolvency, bankruptcy to arbitration, suit for recovery, even some check bouncing matters, have even done mergers and acquisitions. I mean, it's kind of those tier law firms where you have to do hands-on approach on every everything. Whatever the client wants, you just get the job done. You don't segregate your work that I'm part of this team, I'm part of that team. So we do litigation work, and if there's something correlated to that, which is touching the peripheries of litigation, we do that also. So that has been my small little journey. I've completely not accomplished a lot, but I mean, I kind of enjoyed it. I had the satisfaction of doing things which would impact people, which would impact organizations, which would impact my clients and help them in a better way. Like, I can at least say that whatever problems and complex problems they got to me, I was able to provide them a solution to them. So yeah, I think that's that.
Right, sir. So your profile and journey has been quite interesting till now. So you, like, as I studied your profile, so you had been part of various speaking forums during your college, like moods and debating societies. So what would you advise to law students who are pursuing law right now, or who just graduated this year, or like who wants to pursue law in future? So are these things really helpful? Should they go into it, or should they just focus on academics?
One should never just focus on your academics, even if you're in any profession. In fact, you should always do some kind of extracurricular activities because it helps in building your overall personality. Even if you're studying school in class 8th or 9th or 10th or 11th, you should still do some kind of theater work. Some, like in our school, we used to have Spick McKay and all. Do that. Do painting if you want, like just to have an imaginative, creative mind. In law college, someone who just passed out 12th class and wants to do 5-year law, or just graduated 3-year law college, 3-year course, and wants to do that 3-year law course. My 2 pieces of advice would be that do it if you're comfortable with it. Do it if you enjoy it. Just see what are the various spectrums in this field and which one you're comfortable with. Don't just do litigation because your father is a litigation lawyer, or your uncle is a litigation lawyer, or your someone you look up to is a litigation lawyer. Just do it if you're comfortable, because there are a lot of ups and downs in litigation. Become a corporate lawyer if you feel like you can do that kind of paperwork. The pay incentive is quite good, but then your life would not be that sorted as it looks like from outside. Those who are studying in the college, do mooting. But always remember, the moot court experience is not the real court experience. There's a hell of a difference, if I can use this word. Well, of course, even if you, in a moot competition, even if you win or lose, you just get a participation certificate. In a real life court scenario, even if you lose, you still get your client's fees. So that's a better incentive. Moot competition, well, I can share my experience. I was a finalist in Chennai, if I'm not wrong, I don't remember, like 10 years, 7 years back. In Chennai Government Law College, we were finalists there. I was quarterfinalist in Narsi Monji in Mumbai. Yeah, and we were quarterfinalists. Yeah. Do research if you're mooting. I'll give these 3-4 points. When you're mooting, do the good amount of research. I mean, you should breathe and eat that proposition which is in front of you for the moot competition. That subject, that 5-page, 7-page, 10-page subject topic which you get on any topic, that is, you should read that at least 10-20 times, because every time when I used to read, at least whenever I used to read again and again, I used to find some new points. Every time that every statement in that moot proposition would have 2 different meanings. In fact, 3 to 4 different meanings. One from the appellant side, one for the respondent side, one for the plaintiff side, one for the defendant side. Depends on which side you choose, but you should always take in mind what the opposite party is going to say, so that you can prepare accordingly, even in the rebuttal stage and sub-rebuttal stage. Example, in that Chennai competition, we were, I think, against Bhopal, the National Law School Bhopal. So there was no sub-rebuttal in the rules of the moot competition, but suddenly I think the judges wanted to have a fun with the law students, so he just, we'll have sub-rebuttal also. So that kind of complex things for us, but at least we knew what the opposite party would say, then we would prepare accordingly for that. So these are the things you should keep in mind. Read it as much as possible. If it's on any act, read that bare act 20 times, 10 times, 15 times. The more you read, the more ingrained it becomes in your mind, and then you know what to say, what not to say. Find out judgments, cite those judgments. Don't cite some random Wikipedia notes, some Google articles that will have no value. In fact, that will degrade your presentation in front of the judge, always cite judgments, and always read the facts of the judgment which you're citing, because the judge will ask how is this applicable on this proposition which is in front of you. Even in court, I was arguing a matter in Delhi High Court. I cited judgments. The judge asked me, are those relevant? How? What are the facts? So you have to correlate to that. So even in moot competition, just ensure that you correlate to that. Always be humble. Even the moot competition judges are there to literally, you can just keep it in your mind that they're to go after you. They make your life hell in that 5 minutes speaking point of time. So don't get frustrated or irritated by what the judge is saying, that the moot court judge is saying. Don't get pissed off. Just keep your calm. He is actually testing whether how much patience level you have. So keep calm, even if he's saying or she's saying something which is not relevant to you. He or she is actually testing your patience. So keep calm, no matter what the adverse scenario is. Always stay stable. Read as much as possible on the research point and write judgments. There's a mooting part. Apart from mooting, you can write papers, write articles. In fact, that is very important. In fact, I can say that is even more important than mooting, especially if you want to do corporate law, because that shows your writing ability, shows you how is your mental framework, how your mind works. If I haven't met you, Radhika, if I read the articles that you've written, if I read the notes you've written, I can understand how your mind works, or how your personality is. And I mean, I can understand a fraction of how your personality is. So your writing abilities show your legal skills, your drafting skills. So write articles, write paper writing, show it, present it. If you have the opportunity to present it in your college, do that. If you have the opportunity to present in another college, another university, do that. Get these journals, ensure they publish it. In fact, contact these newspapers, Hindu, Pioneer, Indian Express. They would love to have a second opinion, third opinion on various topics. I mean, saying it in Hindi, हर किसी को ज्ञान सुनने का मन करता है. So just give legal ज्ञान, everyone would listen to it. So write paper writing, write articles, do more competitions, do take part in sports activities. Do take part in sports activities. That is even more important. It will help you boost not only your immunity. आजकल तो हर किसी को immunity की जरूरत ही है. It will help, but also make you mentally fit and physically fit. So take part. Just ensure it doesn't affect your studies. That and end of the day आप पढ़ने आते college में, so don't just ensure it doesn't affect your studies. But do all these things are very, very, very important. If you just get good marks but don't do these things, the interviewer will ask, I mean, क्या 5 साल क्या कर रहे थे भाई? कुछ किया इसके पढ़ाई लिखाई के अलावा? That it develops your overall personality. Coming to the last point, the recent law graduates. I feel sorry for the graduates of 2020. Well, just hang on there, you will get a job. 2-3 महीने की बात है. I graduated in 2009 after my BCom honors, and in 2008 there was that financial crisis of Lehman Brothers and all. So like I was told कि 1-2 साल बैठ ही जाओ घर पे. There's no future, कुछ नहीं. I mean कुछ marketing, sales का काम कर लो, sales boy बन के स्कूटर बैठ के चले जाओ, वो सब कर लो. So just relax. If people will say all negative things around you, एक कान से सुन के दूसरे कान से निकाल ले. 3-4 month thing, you will get a job. Don't worry about that. Just keep applying at various organizations. There are a lot of law firms. Even if you don't get a tier 1 law firm, there are tier 2, tier 3 law firms which you'll get. Even if you're on litigation, there are a lot of openings of individual lawyers will give you that space and time and job opportunities. What you should do as a recent law graduate, I'll first speak about litigation, then I'll speak about as a corporate lawyer what you should do. As a litigation lawyer, you will be told to go do filing. No senior is going to tell you, "Ye le bhai, ja aage kar le ja." I mean, you'll find a rare. I love if someone senior gives that opportunity to junior, but I don't think there's happening. There are various reasons for that also. I mean, the fresher can't expect him to argue like Kishan Bharti type judgment or matters in front of a 3-judge bench. So do research. I keep emphasizing on research, because that is the backbone of any argument you do before a judge. The more research you do, the lesser it is actually. You should do more and more. There's always more. The devil lies in the details. So do as much research as possible. Cite English cases to support your point after Indian cases, not the English cases come before Indian cases. Cite Blacklaw's dictionaries of different meanings of a word. Cite that has a good impression on the judges. cite Indian judgments from Supreme Court, then to augment that, try to find judgments of that same judge before whom the matter is going to take place. That has an even more impact on the judge. If you cite a judgment on which he has already passed, on that issue on which he already passed a judgment, and you show them, my lords, you've already done this and you've passed this order in this matter, then, oh, wow, yes, thank you, good for you, here, take this. That has actually happened. That's how real law works. So do good amount of research. Office politics is something no one talks about, but I want to talk about. It happens everywhere. Deal with it. Get a thick skin. It happens. Don't cry like anyone. I see a lot of these young freshers cry in the corner. This guy says this guy doesn't that. Yaar, kaam karo, kaam karne aayo. These is part of life. Don't deal with all these office politics things in your mind. Apart from research and running from court to court, there's filing. Registry filing is something important and something which I see that recent law graduates are not inclined to do. Yeah, this is part of the clerk, part of the munshi's job, not my job. Boss, it is your job also. It was my job also when I also. So it is nothing demeaning in filing when you're doing it yourself. Recently now you can do online filing also. That's not a problem. But if you go to the court registry, the reason why you should go through the grind to understand how filing works in a high court registry or district court registry is that you should understand how the system works. Matter में कल emergency case है, client है मेरे पास, I want to list, he wants the matter or she wants the matter to be listed tomorrow. For any XYZ reason, the registry says no. What will you tell the client? You have to explain to them why the registry is not listing tomorrow, whether the bench is sitting or not, what are the defect in the file with the due to which the registry took time to clear that and listing day after tomorrow. You have to explain. So you have to know the system to explain that to the client. Tomorrow, if you start your independent practice and your client comes, you cannot say, no, I don't know, the munshi knows, ask the clerk. You have to know it yourself also. You are dealing with the client. These are the reasons you should understand how the registry works and how the system works in itself. Why is it listed before X judge? Why not Y judge? Why? What is the system? What are the rules of listing? People would ask you, so you should know all this. The reason why a fresher or recent law graduate, he or she should know this, because tomorrow, if you want to be an independent lawyer, you have to have grasp on everything. You should know things thoroughly. You cannot just say that this is not my job. You're not setting up a corporate office. You're setting your own office. You should have a hands-on approach. So you should know all this. Then I'll now talk about corporate. If you're a recent corporate graduate, but you will find more office politics there. So yeah, be rest assured that. Go through apart from the acts, for example, if you're doing some project finance, part of the project finance team, if you're told to go to SEBI website, there are a lot of filing process on SEBI website or MCA website. Go through each and everything. Go through even the bylaws of that. Because that will help you not only explain to your senior, you will explain to your partner and the client also. It will have a very good impact if you tell it to your senior. Of course, you should do research on it. If there's any judgment on that, any notification on the ministry, any ordinance passed, you should know that also. But do that and always be crystal clear on the language, how you communicate. Even on emails, you should never use that WhatsApp language. I see that WhatsApp language being used day in and day out. Sorry, boss, that is, you're a lawyer. You're a lawyer and people expect better from you. Even if you walk on the road, I mean, if you गाड़ी में लगा के नहीं चलते, वो एडवोकेट का स्टिकर क्यों लगाते हैं? वो बस दिखाने के लिए नहीं लगाते. आपकी इज्जत होती है समाज में. If I can say it in, rather not a problem if I say it in Hindi also, because I think that will be bigger outreach. या आप जब समाज में जाते हैं, एक वकील साहब, आपको वकील साहब सिर्फ नाम की नहीं बोलते हैं. प्रतिष्ठा रही है वकीलों की इस दुनिया में सदियों से कि आपकी इज्जत इस समाज की, इस कम्युनिटी की इज्जत रहती है. Of course, there are different kind of lawyers. Arun Jaitley once said, I think Chidambaram Saab also once said, there are lawyers, then there are lawyers, then there are lawyers. There are different kind of lawyers. It depends on what kind of lawyer you want to be. But this respect for this community is always there in the society. So there's a reason for that, because a lawyer is expected to know everything on the subject which he or she is commanding, for which people have come for the opinion. So you should know about these things in and out, whatever subject you're working on. So in a corporate law also, if you're drafting something, be very specific, be to the point. Your language should communicate in a way that it is easy, lucid to understand, and people can use that to explain to others also. Always keep this in mind, that if you're writing something, you're explaining to XYZ. That XYZ, we'll use that same language you have used to explain to another ABC. So it's a ripple effect, the butterfly effect is there. Always remember that whatever you're writing on, whatever you're doing research on, whatever you're communicating, that will be used by the person to whom you're communicating to communicate to someone else. He or she will use that. So he or she is actually relying upon you. So you have to be more responsible in communicating any drafting skills, any research skills which you're doing on, or even writing a simple email. Even if you're writing a matter as adjourned in a court hearing to a client, be specific on that, because he or she is relying upon you, and he or she is actually waiting for you to communicate that. So I think these two, 3 points. I hope it helps whoever is listening. But these two, 3 points a recent law graduate in litigation, corporate lawyer should keep in mind. Of course, there are many others, but I think this would be suffice to survive in the office.
So this answer will be very helpful to many people. Even I am going to incorporate some of the things because I just graduated this year. So my next question to you, if I'm not wrong, you're pursuing your LLM right now. So why did you choose to do LLM after 10 years of your LLB? Like, was there any particular thought behind it, or you just went with the flow, or like?
It's not more going with the flow. A lot of people did it after LLB. I saw incentive of doing this because actually helps you. It doesn't help you in market wise to get a job, or that makes not much of a difference, but it helps you understanding different concepts. I mean, I'll give you a very practical example. I think that kind of interface will help the audience understand, whoever listening to this, as to why are the things I do the way I do. Any lawyer, if he or she is working on a proposition or any subject or any research, will not be reading 10 books before that, waiting for something for that to happen. Any matter comes, any file comes. For example, there's a judgment on admission on Order 12 Rule 6 of CPC. If a client comes to me that he's a landlord and there's a tenant, and tenant is not vacating the property, and he accepts on affidavit, the matter is already being pursued in the court, and the client wants to not change the lawyer, and he's saying, he or she, the client, does come to me and wants to show that there's an affidavit on which the tenant accepts that he is my tenant, but in court he or she is saying something. So I can use that Order 12 Rule 6 judgment on admission of CPC that he already accepted it. The tenant already accepts that he has a tenant and landlord relationship. So I can use that in the suit, whatever the facts of the suit are. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to read beforehand that Order 12 Rule 6, that when that matter comes, then I will read the file, then I will read the bare act, then I'll read the judgments, that how it flows to the mind. So the next time when some other client comes on the same topic, then I can be an expert on that and say, add a full thesis on that. But I don't think that's the right way to do. A lot of practicing lawyers do that. Because they become an expert when a client brings a matter, then they spend the whole day, whole night reading citation, judgments, right, commentaries on that, and then they give their opinion to the client. I think it's better you be engaged academically also if you are able to, while practicing. That is, if you're able to do some course, do some 6-month course, 3-month course, do an LM, because then you'll be engaged and you will have a wider perspective on different subjects, different topics, rather than just waiting for some client to bring a subject to you and then you start to read about it. So that was actually the main reason to do so. Why I did not do it earlier, why am I doing it now? I wanted to do it earlier, but because of various reasons, I was not able to. A lot of people did it earlier. A lot of people did and are now doing PhD who did an LLM there. A lot of people have finished the PhD also. So yeah, this was something in the back of the mind that I would want to do it one day, but for various reasons I could not pursue, because as a working person, you have to think about 10 different things and whether you can spend the time on. As a student or some graduated law degree, as whether he or she has done an LLB, it's more easy to do an LLM after that. But doing an LLM after 7-10 years is not that bad. I know a judge sitting in Delhi High Court with whom I used to intern, he did an LLM after 5 years after he did his law degree. He did an LLM from Germany. I am still doing it from India. So there is no age barrier to do an LLM. You can anytime do it. But yeah, as a career wise, I don't see it'll have much of an impact, but it'll just help me enrich my academic value and give a good opinion and have a good mastery on various subjects, rather than me waiting for a client to come and then me going through Manu Patra and SEC and Indian Kanun and then citing out various judgments or reading various commentaries. I can have a bare knowledge on that subject. I can give good gyan. That was one big incentive, to give good gyan on various ways. We lawyers like to talk a lot, so yeah. that was one big incentive for me.
So, you have written 2 books so far, one on your grandfather and other on the Patna High Court. So, can you please enlighten us about a little bit about them?
Thank you so much for asking me this question. I actually wanted to talk about this
Okay.
because I want people to know, if someone wants to write a book, what she or he would go through. I want to explain that. I want to explain my story, how I got a publisher, how no one was willing to even look at what I've written. I want to explain all that to people. Write a book if you have a good flair for the language. Write a book if you have good command on the subject. Write a book if you think have the self confidence to sell it out, and read that book 10 times by yourself. अगर तुम खुद ही पसंद नहीं आ रहा तो तुम how can you expect someone else to like that book, like that content? So read it and then only pursue it. I'll first speak about Patna High Court, then I'll speak about my grandfather's book which I've written. Uh, Patna High Court in 2016 had completed 100 years of its existence. I come from that part of the region of India. My background is from there. So I was just going through with how many books are there. I think there's one book or one couple of books on Patna High Court. Then around about same time, Bombay High Court had completed 150 years of its existence. I tried to search books on Bombay High Court. There were thousand, I think it would be small, but hundreds and thousands of books on Bombay High Court on existence, what kind of judgments are. Because of course Bombay High Court was one of the premier charter courts apart from Madras and Calcutta, which was established by the British during the British time. However, Patna High Court also existed during the British time, and its jurisdiction in fact was not only from Bihar but even undivided Bihar, that is Jharkhand, even parts of Bengal and Odisha also. That was the legacy of Patna High Court. So, like similarly, Bombay High Court had jurisdiction till Sindh, which is currently in Pakistan, but pre-partition India, Bombay High Court from I think Upper Karnataka to Sindh, it had good amount of jurisdiction. Similarly for Patna High Court, but I could not find much of a book. So I thought, like in my own little way, like a small legal minion I am, I would still want to give my 2 cents of opinion on Patna High Court. So I just I shared it with the judge whom I has to clerk with in Supreme Court. He was originally from Patna High Court. So yeah, go ahead. Nothing wrong in it. So then I went to judgments of Patna High Court. Interesting judgments from the past 50. I just went through 8 to 10 judgments. I'll write on those judgments in a simple, lucid form so that I wanted a normal layman to understand. I did not want to cater to the lawyers. I mean, of course, they can read it, but I wanted a normal layman to understand or the legacy of Patna High Court or what the work it has done. If I can say this, I don't know whether it's right or wrong politically, but Patna and Bihar does not impress people from other regions of India as much as a Bombay or a Chennai or a Bangalore would do or a Delhi would do. But let's be frank. So I wanted to kind of correct that image of my part of the region. So I wanted people to know what Patna High Court is. And in fact, I was astonished about the judgments the judges of Patna High Court had given. It was like immense, immaculate. Kameshwar Singh, the Raja of Darbhanga, had in fact, I think Article 31 regarding right to property as a fundamental right. So that apart also that it went to Supreme Court from other courts also, from other regions also. But one of the premier appeals which went from Patna High Court to Supreme Court was from here of Raja Kameshwar Singh. Then what happened in the Supreme Court, it's already part of the record, so I won't go into that. So this was there delivered Patna High Court, and the reasons given on the judgment, cited in the judgment, was very important. In fact, I want people to read the judgment, even if you don't want to read my book, at least the judgment. This is very important on how this right to property as a fundamental right was taken away by, I think, Jawaharlal Nehru's government, and how challenges had taken place and what people had done to protect it. And the judgments given on that topic is very important for people to read. So those kind of judgments were there. Then there was another judgment on human trafficking on which Patna High Court had taken suo motu cognizance. Ara is a district in Bihar. It's a very disturbing story of a young girl who was sold into human trafficking to a middleman by her parents or in-laws. I don't remember correctly. Either by her parents or by in-laws. She was a young girl. I think she was married off or was sent. So either she was sent off by her parents or by her in-laws into human trafficking. She ran away from that middleman. She was rescued by the government official. The government official handed over the girl to the parents. The parents again sold her off to that middleman. Then I think some NGO got hold of the story. They brought to notice. I think they wrote a letter, or they just brought to notice to Patna High Court. I think they filed petition. I'm sorry, I don't think it's sumo to cognizance. They filed a petition. Patna High Court then got hold of the matter, gave strictures, and there's like 5-6 strictures for the government on how to go about for such things. It's a sensitive issue, and how they should work upon it, how they should sanitize a person's mind who is held in such a captivity, how they should sanitize a person's family so that they don't do this again and again. Because I think the family wanted to do this because they want to earn money. They don't have any other source of money, but there are other ways of getting money. This is not the only way of selling your child or your daughter-in-law into human trafficking. So they give strictures and how to go about it, and what are the protocols apart from that also. So they give strictures to the Bihar government. So this is quite common in Delhi High Court, Bombay High Court, where even if you don't file a PL, Delhi High Court will, on some news article, will take sumo to cognizance on some issue and will call in the lawyers representing central government, state government, various department, TDA, PWC, and so on. So, water department, so on and so forth. This is not that common in Patna High Court or those part of regions. So this was one judgment which was very impressive, and the Patna High Court did. The judgment was quite impressive, and it helped. I don't know if it helped human trafficking, reduce human trafficking in that region, but I think it had a good impact. So that is there in this book. That kind of, I was really impressed by the judgment, and there were a couple of other judgments on various tax issues also. So that was there. Once you write a book, then you go to various publishing houses. 90% will tell you no. The one who are established, Penguins and all, like others, good ones, I can't even blame them, because I'm like nobody. If your first time writer is actually nobody. So you need to have a really good amount of content to impress a publishing house that they can go have a look at your content. So be ready that if you write a book, most of the people, publishing houses, would not even look at you and your content. Somehow I managed to find someone who was really impressed by it and was connected to what I was telling him, and he was ready to it. Similarly, the book on my grandfather, although I don't kind of talk about this a lot, even in my CVs, I don't write much about it. I've written on LinkedIn profile, but I don't write much about it because at the end of the day, it's a personal thing. But yeah, I had found books on my grandfather, but they were commentaries on his life. They were commentaries on his life as a student, as a political activist, then as a minister at various portfolios at the central level. This book is actually pictographical through photos at different places, which shows how his life evolved from a student to an activist to a politician. And then in the end, he was assassinated in a bomb blast. So that final photo is there at the Samastipur railway station, where that bomb blast took place while he was at the podium speaking. So that someone threw lobbed a grenade at the podium. So there's a photo of that also. So it's a small. I was not born when he passed away. In fact, my father is the youngest son. So he got married in 13 years after my grandfather passed away. I was 12 years after my grandfather passed away. I was born 13 years after my grandfather passed away. So I never met my grandfather. I only knew him through books and through stories which elders used to tell me. So this was my little contribution to his political legacy. And I just gave a small little brief about him. So whoever doesn't know about him, the current generation in Bihar don't know much about him. So I did my small little honest way, wanted people to know. So I forwarded some letters which were written by late Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi, Mr. Sunil Dutt, late actor, and then the photos started in the book, and how people had written little things about him. And these photos of him are with many different people, personalities of that era, 70s, 60s, and 50s. So that book. It's not much written about it, but it's a photographical landscape on my grandfather's journey, his political journey. The same publishing house published this. Since it was about my grandfather, so they did not have much of an issue. But I had to explain a lot about the Patna High Court and my content regarding that to the publishing. But both were published. Both are available on Amazon, and I'm assuming those who have bought it are not regretting buying it. Although I'm not getting much of royalty right now, but I hope it's good and it's marketed well and people are enjoying it. I'm thinking of writing. I'm on the middle of writing another book on media law and sports law. There's this IPL and this Premier Leagues of various sports franchises is not as simple as it looks. There's a lot of inclination and analogy between the two, sports law and media law. So I'm writing on that aspect of it, on the contract work done behind the back, behind all these events and between different sports personalities and the franchises and other organizations and houses which are part of it, and what kind of issues are dealt with regarding sports law and media law. So I'm writing on that. Then I might write something on intricacies of arbitration and insolvency, because those are both are actually connected in some space. So I'll be writing on these two issues in the coming time. I don't know when, but sure I will.
All the best to you for your upcoming books. So if you don't mind me asking, as a lawyer, are you happy with the judgment that was delivered in your grandfather's case?
I said it back then also when the judgment came. My family members also at different times have said that regarding the judgment. I'll say it again on record also. I have no issue in saying that. We don't think the group of Anand Margis who were made the accused were the real accused. We thought of a bigger conspiracy. But a lot of things happened during that time. This was pre-emergency. My grandfather passed away in January 1975. In midst of 75, emergency was started. A lot of people from this generation, my generation, don't know about emergency. Even I can't say much about it because I was not born that time, or the events which led to emergency. But that government, I'm not blaming anyone. I don't want to name anyone, but that government that time, said various things. There was an attack, I believe, on the Chief Justice of India. He's not one of the judges. I'm not sure if he was Chief Justice, but Justice Ain Ray. I'm not sure. I can check it up. He was a judge in Supreme Court, whether Chief Justice of India or not, but I'm not sure. But at Tilak Marg, he was attacked. What kind of attack was that? Whether the same group of people were involved, I don't know. But it was said that the same group of people who attacked and assassinated my grandfather were the same group of people who attacked the Chief Justice. So that was to say a narrative of propaganda that things are going down. So for the government, for the sovereignty of the nation, people in governmental positions are being attacked, are being assassinated. We don't think so. I'm sorry. There was more to it than what meets the eye. A lot of things happened. I can in fact say this here, that after the bomb blast took place, in fact, there's a movie on my grandfather, Hututu. In fact, Nana Patekar, it's not exactly on my grandfather, but the events, if someone knows the story, can easily understand what that movie is about. In 97, 98, that movie came on, Hututu. If someone wants to understand what I'm trying to say, you can watch that movie. Nana Patekar, Sunil Shetty, and another actress was there in that movie. So you can see that movie and understand what I'm trying to say. I can't say much. I hope people understand why not, because of various reasons. After the grenade was lobbed on my grandfather's podium when he was speaking, he was being taken to a hospital to a region which was far from that place, because that place did not have good amount of medical infrastructure. The train through which he was being taken was being delayed for various XYZ reasons. There have been reports on why that train was being delayed, and by whom train was being delayed, to ensure that he passes away, just to ensure that. Now, there was investigation also being done at the CID level by Bihar government after 75, which gave up interesting outcomes, that there was a bigger hand which was at play to ensure that he gets assassinated then and there. Even when he reached the medical hospital after that, he got conscious, and in fact, the younger brother of my grandfather, that is Dr. Jagannath Mishra, who was also Chief Minister of Bihar, he was grievously hurt. So my grandfather woke up, saw him, how was he and other members who were there, like police person was also attacked. So he was just seeing how recuperation of them was taking place. They all recuperated, but some other people also passed away, but they all, to whom my grandfather was checking up on, they all recuperated. But unfortunately, my grandfather had a heart attack. He could not survive that. Now I'll come to the reason why I say that, why we think Anand Margis is not responsible. Anand Margis was, even various articles, various reports have been published by Indian Express, by various eminent journalists. Arun Shuri sir had published an article as to who killed. There's a book on who killed Ellen Mishra. There's a book written on that by someone else, not by me, not my family, but not by any family member also. It was written in 70s, 80s, if I'm not wrong, by someone on who killed Ellen Mishra. So there's written articles. I can't speak much. I hope you understand why not. But if anyone wants to understand, should read that book, Who Killed Ellen Mishra. Google it, you will find it. And there are various articles. Dr. Subramanian Swamy on record has given stated reasons as he was expecting this. Mr. Kuldeep Nayyar, a renowned journalist, had said on record recently in 2015. Again, he reiterated that he knew that something was going to happen to him. If someone gets assassinated by an unknown organization, Anand Marke was not known also. It's not like Lashkar-e-Taiba of today's day and Hizbul Mujahideen, some terrorist organization. So a random unknown organization would. Can you imagine in today's day and age? Sorry if I'm sensing an emotional outburst, but can you imagine today's day and age a sitting cabinet minister being assassinated, and then that case takes 40 years. 40 years this case took. It's a blot in Indian judiciary. My grandfather was assassinated in 1975. The judgment, right or wrong, let's not go into the merits. The judgment comes in 2014. That also, when the Supreme Court gave good strictures in 2006 and 9 or 7, when one of the accused went on appeal to Supreme Court as to why is this case dragging so much. So my question in various interviews also which take place in various media also asked me that why was CID of local state Bihar government came up with an outcome was great to give a report on to what was the conspiracy, the scheme, who was dealt with it. Now, higher power was there whom I cannot name for various reasons. But then purposefully that was shifted to CBI. On whose thing was shifted to CBI and for what reason? And then when it came to CBI, it went to local district court at Delhi. The file was shut. It was not an inch was moved on that file. That not even the dust were cleaned on that file. I don't various reasons. So I'm not happy with the judgment. In fact, one of the accused had appealed in High Court and they've got to stay on that lifelong sentence. I have already stated that we would want a re-examination of the investigation, and if possible, we'll take legal recourse on that also. That whenever that is, but I would certainly want to do that, and I think I will in some time.
You are associated with an organization, I would say, called Jan Samvad. Like, what is that about and what does it work for?
We do various webinars, various sessions. Jan Samvad, in fact, there's one event we're doing tomorrow where we have called in some international set of speakers, one from Pakistan, one from US, one from UK. Two are lawyers, one is a public policy consultant. They will be speaking on how COVID has affected their profession respectively and in their respective countries. We did one with law firm partners, one from Cyril Amachan Mangaldas, one from Luthra and Luthra. One was from litigation, one was from real estate law. So we just wanted an purview on how real estate law and litigation has been affected by COVID-19. I am doing matters sitting at home by video conferencing of Delhi High Court matters, and so are other lawyers. Now, we had wanted to just show to different audiences, different class of audiences as to how things are changing litigation by video conferencing, how you can argue. I'll give an example. I had briefed a senior for a matter. Senior was sitting in his house, I was sitting in my house, judge is sitting in her house, the court master is sitting in his house. We were all coordinating by video conferencing. So I had briefed and did a conference one day prior on WhatsApp video call. 2 years back, no one would have think of briefing a senior counsel on WhatsApp video call, especially when some seniors throw files on your face. So that is impossible to do that on WhatsApp video call. So I did that. A lot of people are doing that on these days by WhatsApp video call, briefing senior or by phone or by Zoom call, like one we are doing here. So while my senior was arguing on some point on some matter, some point the judge had asked and he had answered, but I thought some point was missed out. By the time I was WhatsApping him that, sir, I can't speak while the hearing is going on. If 2-3 lawyers start speaking at the same time, the judge will say, he just shut it off and just give a date. So while I was WhatsApping him that, sir, this point has to be said, matter was argued, date was given, matter finished. So these are one of the small things which one has to prepare while doing video conferencing hearing of any court. This is not something one gets prepared, but one has to watch and learn. So we discussed this topic in that webinar. In real estate law, how the property rates have decreased. Scavenging is a term which some property buyer wants to do, and how that organization is buying various properties at low rates, as compared to rates it would have had this pandemic not taken place. How RERA functions, what are the kind of orders RERA gives, how does RERA Gurgaon work, how does RERA Noida work, how does RERA in Maharashtra work. So we discussed that. Similarly, before that, we had a webinar with Justice Iqbal Ahmed Ansari, former Chief Justice Patna High Court and current Chairman Punjab State Human Rights Commission. He discussed extradition law and how extradition law will be in a post-COVID-19 world. He gave various examples of extradition law. Abu Salim example he gave on how the law changed and all. So he gave a topic that the main fulcrum of doing this webinar was that COVID-19 has impacted everyone, people in different professions. Last week, I did a webinar, we did on Jan Samvad, we did with Ms. Sohani Kohli. Ms. Sohani Kohli is an actress and a model. She discussed various aspects of her profession. Now she's sitting at home here in Delhi and working on different projects. If you go to her Instagram profile, you'll find her advertising for various clothing lines sitting here. You don't do this generally. You go to the shoot advertising agency's office, or you go to some office, then you do the shooting and all. So she said that how she's doing it here, and she's part of a movie called Afat on MX Player. So she just discussed that also, how that will change. We discussed how in the Karnataka movie industry, say serial TV serial industry, people are using umbrellas. If you use an umbrella during the sets, you create that 2-meter space for yourself, so no one comes close. That 6 feet difference is created once you just hold an umbrella. It's not raining, you just hold an umbrella and just move around so that people don't come close to you. So these innovative things people would do. We were discussing that. We discussed how just sitting at home, they were making videos. One actor sitting in Delhi, one actor sitting in Bombay, one actor sitting in Bangalore, Calcutta, Hyderabad, and they're making that. You could not think of doing something like this in a pre-pandemic scenario, but you're doing this now because that's what is required. So we discussed that from her profession, how modeling works, and how the film industry works, and what kind of ups and downs she faced. And if someone wants to go into this profession, what he or she should think before and what to focus on. Like she said that just having six-pack abs are not good enough. You should just look good, have a good physique. Looking good means having good physique, have that personality, have self-confidence. She discussed that from her profession. Similarly, the lawyers, the law firm partner discussed that from their profession, why they pursued law and what the aspects of their real estate law and litigation law. Justice Ansari discussed that from his part of view. Before these webinars, Jan Samvad, their Facebook live sessions where 20-30 minutes were given to various speakers to speak about their profession, and they are on various topics. Someone was there from Delhi High Court Bar Association, was there, member executive was there, Mr. Nagendra Benipal. He spoke on environmental law. Then there was Mr. Murari Tiwari, he spoke on other aspect of law. There was a professor also of law from Patna University. He spoke on another aspect of caste system and what the law is and how things would change. So the point of having this Jan Samvad is to have a dialogue and interaction with people who would not have access to this kind of knowledge easily, but would have a speaker who would communicate and on that point, on that subject. So for example, while I was doing this webinar session with Mr. Faisal Shirwani from Lucha and Mr. Ashish Jain from Simla Amanchand Mangaldas, someone sitting from Kerala in the comment section had posted a question. Someone sitting from Amritsar had posted a question. Now, if this pandemic was not going on, we would not have done this webinar. We would not have done this webinar, that students sitting in Kerala would not have been able to put a question to Mr. Ashish Jain, who is a partner in Simla Amanchand Mangaldas in Delhi. That student sitting in Amritsar would not have that opportunity to ask that question to Mr. Faisal Shirwani or Mr. Ashish Jain sitting here in Delhi. That would never happen. We create this interface between law students or even young professionals or people from. By the way, this Jan Samvad is done not only by law students, but there's an engineering student also. So the audience is of engineering and law student and other professions also. So political students are also there. So this interface is what is important and what we try to communicate. I'm just a moderator. I just help them out to get people on board and to have a speaker. Like one which we're doing tomorrow, the international set of speakers. So we just try to communicate to the audience as to how they are dealing it in their respective countries. So I spoke to the lawyer sitting in London. He just said that he's doing it similarly how we are doing it in India. He just has to go to court once or twice. Otherwise, he or she is doing video conferencing there. Similarly, the situation in Pakistan. The lawyer sitting in Pakistan, she said that she's facing something similar in Pakistan, and they're doing video conferencing there also. Then she said about 10 more things about real estate law in her country and competition law and banking regulation, which she'll discuss in a webinar tomorrow. So the main purpose of doing this Jan Samvad is that to have an interface with the audience and with people from different professions and how they're dealing with COVID and the current pandemic and how they perceive this pandemic to impact their professions as a general view.
Thank you so much, sir. This was very informative session, and I hope this will help a lot of students and a lot of lawyers. And we wish you all the best for your upcoming books and a healthy future. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.